Pokemon Legends Arceus is special. It's the Pokemon fantasy at its most real, and right now, it represents the games at their most new and different. As someone who spent basically my entire life with the franchise, I've been there from Generation 1 on the Game Boy and traveled through various regions and consoles over the span of nearly 3 decades. And because I've been with the series since its onset, the major changes brought by Pokemon Legends Arceus really had me kind of shook. We begin with an active tutorial. As soon as we gain control of the player character, we're encouraged to run around the starting area, Prelude Beach. Our task of capturing the 3 Hisui starter Pokemon, Johto's Cyndaquil, Univa's Oshawott, and Alola's Rowlet, teaches us the basics of aiming the reticle and throwing Pokeballs, something completely new to the series, yet a core mechanic of this game. Legends Arceus lets us manually perform an action we've been watching play out for years. It's easy and intuitive, almost surprisingly so. After completing the tutorial and reveling in that feeling of finally getting my hands on a game I've anticipated for months, I chose my own starter, Cyndaquil, and set off on my journey. This is when I really learned what I was getting into. It sounds beyond cliche to say this, but from my opening moments exploring the Obsidian Fieldlands, I knew this was going to be something different and something important to the evolution of the Pokemon franchise. As I was running through the fields, curious as to what surprises lie in every direction, my thumb was instinctively moving the camera, changing my field of vision just as I had done in countless other 3D adventure games, including Pokemon Sword and Shield's Wild Area, Isle of Armor, and Crown Tundra. Sword and Shield's open area, free camera player perspective was revolutionary, but now I was playing an entire Pokemon game in that style with no exceptions, and that was really exciting. I was slowly coming to realize what would likely be the future of the series, and my eyes were then open to some of the smaller details. Now while exploring, I wasn't stopping to do this, or even this. Instead, when I saw something that looked like a useful item or material on the ground, I was doing this, and effortlessly snagging items while running by. It was all one smooth motion and I never broke stride. No unskippable dialogue, and the immersion never halted for a second. We'll see this to be a common theme throughout Legends Arceus. And that's just scratching the surface of all the new I still had to soak in. I soon ran up on a wild Bidoof. Nothing too crazy, right? This is a common early game Pokemon. But in the case of my opening hours with Pokemon Legends, it actually was pretty crazy. Instead of a traditional wild encounter where the game is halted for a random battle, I was now able to aim my throwing reticle and launch my starter Cyndaquil's Pokeball in Bidoof's direction, which instantly initiated a battle. No big pause, barely a cutscene. And look, I can still move around freely. I can browse my Pokemon's moves and watch the battle play out, all while still moving in any direction I want to. While the newly allowed free motion doesn't add all that much to the game's battle system, the effect it has on the player should be noted. It adds to the immersion of the Pokemon battling experience in a whole new way. Now, if I want to move to get a better view of my Cyndaquil's attack, I sure can. And watch out, if you get too close, you'll get hit by the moves from the Pokemon battle and be knocked down. Talk about immersion. Now I need to make sure I stay out of the way of Flame Wheel or Hyper Beam. But what if I've had enough and want to run away from battle? I can. No need for a menu command, and no invisible walls. I come across a bad type matchup, maybe I accidentally agitated a super high level alpha Pokemon, not a problem. If I need to leave the battle, I can literally just leave the scene and it will work the same way as if I've selected run from the menu. It's simple stuff really, but it feels really profound implemented in a tried and true decades old combat system like Pokemon's. If you've already spent some time playing Legends Arceus, you've likely already experienced everything I'm talking about. And if you grew up with the Pokemon franchise like I did, you probably felt a similar sense of wonder when observing all of these simple but honestly shocking changes to the core formula. And while the purpose of this video isn't to go through all the changes new to Legends Arceus, I will be sharing my thoughts and feelings about some of the major ones. Here, I'll be detailing my experience exploring the game's Hisui region, the 120 hours and counting I spent in it. I got intimately familiar with Pokemon Legends Arceus. It captured my attention big time time, and I can say wholeheartedly that I love the game. But despite this love, I also realize it has its flaws, like some clumsy control options, chattiness and filler content, and a questionable battle system overhaul that makes the game seem really spin-offy, in a way that I'm not a huge fan of. Most of all though, I want to talk about the clever bits, the smart systems, the unforgettable surprises, and the emotions that made Pokemon Legends Arceus one of the most special gaming experiences I've had in years. The Hisui region is made up of 5 distinct areas, each with unique geographical features and certain Pokemon types native to each. The Obsidian Fieldlands are sparse and peaceful. The open fields are home to many docile Pokemon. Large sections of the map are flat and unobstructed, making this the perfect home for the noble Weirdeer in its majestic stride. Yet the Fieldlands has many surprises in its corner, including some dangerous sections that can easily befall adventurers if they're not careful. Take caution trekking through Sandgem Flats, as despite their elusive nature, strong psychic Pokemon like Abra and Kadabra are not afraid to strike you down with their mysterious power. Aggressive Pokemon like Staravia will not hesitate to hunt you down at the mere sound of your footsteps. And be careful crossing the banks of Lake Verity, that's Alpha Snorlax's territory. For those curious enough to climb the cliffs near the waterfall, an Alpha Blissey awaits there, whose massive HP stat will reward any trainer who's able to take it down with a large EXP boost. These cliffs are a great training spot, but the power is perhaps nowhere greater than the Grand Tree Arena. A circular battle arena with a massive tree at its center, the designated home of the Great Noble Cleaver, a revered force in both the sweeping fields and among the trees. The Crimson Mirelands are an often foggy, swampy wetlands crawling with poisonous creatures. You can sense your need to beware the wildlife from the foreboding red of the soil that gives this area its name. The Mirelands are home to the Diamond Clan, who created a sacred temple here. This man-made monument speaks to the ingenuity of this group and how they were able to survive and create a settlement despite the soggy earth and easily agitated wild Pokemon. It's clear the settlement didn't come without casualty though. Ghost-type Pokemon like Ghastly and Haunter roam the swamps also. Could they be the lost souls of those taken by the bog? Heading north in the Mirelands sees us escape the bog and brings us to higher, safer ground where the people chose to settle. An ancient ruin rests on the cliff above the settlement, home to the mysterious large odd keystone, yet another reminder of lives lost to the dangers of these lands. Despite the many fearsome ghost and poison types in the bog, Ursa's Ring looms at the southeast of the map. It's here that a certain normal type Pokemon reigns as king, with the top dog Noble Ursaluna lording over the nearby Sludge Mound. The Cobalt Coastlands will always be memorable. Its main appeal is the beach and large aquatic areas, yet it constantly reminds us of its eerie other half, its steep, treacherous cliffs and sites of paranormal activity. Our initial mission into the coastlands is to investigate Fire Spit Island, where a crew was seemingly attacked by ghosts. When we first reach the coast, we encounter Warden Polina of the Pearl Clan, who teaches us about the noble Arcanine who died saving its pup who was swept away by a strong current. Exploring this area feels like a constant tug of war between water's duality, its life-giving properties, and its deadly might. The sea here is a beautiful aqua color with protruding landmarks on the horizon, including an active volcanic island and these eye-catching rock spires in the distance, which for some reason distinctly resemble the horns from the Pokemon Pinsir. These beacons in the distance appeal to our sense of adventure and invite us to explore. Yet while we're here, we can't forget the noble Arcanine, with its gravestone atop the seaside cliff serving as a constant reminder of the sea's unforgiving might and the lives lost at its hands. This reminder is never stronger than when we searched the grounds of an abandoned shipwreck, crawling with ghost-type Pokemon like Duskull, Drifloon, and Ghastly, presumably the still lively spirits of a captain and crew lost long ago. The Coronet Highlands are dark and mountainous. The color palette here goes from dark green to black, with any bright color being an extreme rarity. The dark cliffs pierce the sky, urging on our human instincts to move upwards and chase the light. This is why it's here we are to climb the cliff sides with the help of Sneasler, chasing the next plateau. The noble Pokemon of the Highlands, Electrode, is a strong electric type, a beacon of light who resides among the ruins high atop the cliffs. It's also among the ruins where we find Rotom, yet another light in the night. The electric type Magnezone can be seen flying at high altitudes as well. These Pokemon are tough to track down, but catching them is a sweet reward. Our penultimate destination, the Highlands, urge us to keep going, to keep climbing. Standing at the grounded camp and looking up toward the mountain peaks is a metaphor for our journey to understand the almighty Sinnoh and the space-time rift, working towards unraveling Hisui's ancient mysteries. It's quite fitting that here, at the apex of the region, is where we eventually come to face almighty Sinnoh, and we're entrusted with the game's final mission, to seek out all Pokemon. As amusing as it is, I can't help but think this is an ancient version of the saying, "Gotta catch 'em all." And finally, the Alabaster Icelands. This frigid tundra provides a wide expanse for us to savor the game's final area. In the Icelands, the scope expands not just to Snow Point Temple, a labyrinthine structure with a puzzling interior, home to powerful psychic-type Pokemon and one of Hisui's most elusive legends, but also to a series of underground caves, some filled with rare yet dangerous Pokemon. In spite of their cold, unforgiving nature, the Icelands opens up Hisui for us in a brand new way. Now it's not just the mountain peaks we can explore, but the shrouded subterranean ice caverns as well. Plus it's in the Icelands where we befriend Braviary, a Pokemon capable of transporting us through the air. Braviary helps us take in the region from an all-new perspective, and it all starts high above the Icelands at the peak of Snow Point Temple. Alabaster Icelands is the game's most versatile area, with large snow-covered fields, underground caverns filled with secrets, towering cliffs to scale, the calm waters of Lake Acuity at its highest peak, and vast skies through which to soar. Without a doubt, the Icelands is the truest realization of the explorative playground imagined for Pokemon Legends Arceus. I love how you can feel the bloodline of Sinnoh in every part of Hisui, from the music remixes to the character dialogue to the Pokemon species. Even the jingle of the Celestica flute, which never fails to hit my nostalgia bone, as it's the same jingle the Nintendo DS made when booting up Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. The game doesn't just simply tell us that Hisui is ancient Sinnoh, rather it gives us constant little reminders that makes us feel its traces every so often. Even the human characters in Legends Arceus are reminiscent of their modern-day Sinnoh lineage. If you're familiar with the Pokemon games of old, especially Generation 4, you've probably noticed that most of the major characters in Pokemon Legends Arceus are modeled to be an ancient ancestor of another major character from the future Sinnoh region. For example, your female Galaxy Team counterpart Akari is clearly a distant relative of Diamond and Pearl's rival character Dawn, and based on a striking resemblance, Galaxy Commander Kamado is likely a relative of Sinnoh's Professor Rowan. I guess the designers couldn't decide whether they wanted to make Cynthia's ancestor female or male, so they went with both, as she clearly has two ancient predecessors in Kojita and Volo. Fittingly, both are highly intertwined with the legends and lore of ancient Hisui. Cynthia and her grandmother, who introduces us to the legends in modern-day Sinnoh's Celestic Town, are likely descended from these two. Even more minor characters, like our gardener friend Colza, bears a striking resemblance to Sinnoh's grass-type gym leader Gardenia. The designers really didn't need to go this deep with the character connections in Pokemon Legends Arceus, but they did, and I can't reiterate enough how cool and interesting this is. The Pokemon franchise has some of the best subtle, understated lore and theories behind it, and PLA gives us so much juicy connective tissue, which really helps to sell the fact that the game does indeed take place in the distant past of the same Sinnoh region we've known for years. The ancestry web goes beyond just Sinnoh residents too. For example, the female bandit Charm is hinted at as being a distant relative of both Sinnoh's Elite Four member Bertha and Kanto's iconic Elite Four member Agatha. Charm sends out both Rhydon and Gengar when you battle her, which are clearly references to Bertha's Rhyperior and of course Agatha's partner Gengar. This all but confirms a familial relationship between the two Elite Four members. house, and Charm's place in that family tree. Charm even directly mentions hailing from the Kanto region during the showdown on Firespit Island. And speaking of other regions, Pokemon Legends also brings a mysterious cameo from a character who hails not only from another region, but also the future of the Pokemon world. That's right, time travel. It's not clear why exactly the Unova region's Pokemon trainer Ingo is in the game, but I have a theory attempting to explain his presence, which we'll talk about later. I also want to quickly shout out the character Benny. Benny, Jubilife Village's resident expert in potato mochi, might be a distant ancestor of Wally from the Hoenn region. I got a kick out of the plot twist where he's revealed to be a ninja and tries to stop us on our late game ascent of Mount Coronet. He even has a Gardevoir and Gallade on his team. The Pokemon lore really runs deep. While the main appeal of Pokemon Legends Arceus is certainly exploring and catching Pokemon, I feel the game's characters and narrative are often overlooked and underappreciated. It's extremely clear that a ton of love and care went into creating the Hisui region and the characters which inhabit it. After our main character mysteriously travels through time and crashes onto the beach, PLA's characters are the ones who set us on our feet again. The ones closest to us are there every step of the journey. An overwhelmingly positive energy exudes from Akari, our young counterpart and de facto rival who has nothing but good intentions. She works at the right hand of Professor Laventon as part of the Galaxy research team, and is on a constant quest to become stronger for the sake of the region's Pokemon and for those around her. Professor Laventon is a quirky, cap-wearing older gentleman completely devoted to Pokemon research. He is committed to his dream of completing the Pokédex, and sees us, the player, as a major help in order to get there. Laventon serves as one of our main guides and instructors throughout the game's entire journey. He works out of the Galaxy Hall, located in Jubilife Village. It's here where the entire operation is headquartered, and we meet some of the Galaxy team higher-ups. Captain Silene is a strong, stern woman who is a high-ranking commander responsible for leading research expeditions. Despite her cold exterior, we learn that she has a soft side, and I found her to be one of the game's most endearing characters, mostly due to the rare moments when she opens up to show her true kindness. Silene's boss is Commander Kamado, another serious individual who oversees the entire Galaxy operation. Kamado is concerned with the recent occurrences of frenzied Pokemon, as he sees Pokemon as fearsome creatures that humans must constantly be defending themselves from. Kamado wants to learn more about Pokemon as a means to get the upper hand on them in order to push forward human civilization in Hisui. He's responsible for the growth and expansion of Jubilife Village that we see throughout the course of the game, and despite his no-nonsense disposition, is ultimately a kind individual who wants to maintain safety and prosperity for those around him. Most of the other major characters we meet during our time in the Hisui region are the various Wardens. Wardens are strong individuals and members of either the Diamond or Pearl clans who devote themselves to looking after one of Hisui's special Pokemon. This includes the 5 noble Pokemon we encounter on our quest. The first Warden we come across is Mai from the Diamond Clan. Our intro to Warden Mai serves as our first big story mission of the game. During this mission, we're able to win favor with Weirdeer, Stantler's new Hisuian evolution. After defeating an Alpha Kricketune in Deer Track Heights of the Obsidian Fieldlands, we are rewarded with the Celestica Flute, which allows us to call upon Weirdeer at any time. We can then ride on Weirdeer's back around the lands of Hisui, which greatly speeds up transportation. Upon meeting the first Pearl Clan Warden Lien, he immediately challenges us to battle. His proclaimed fearsome Gumi isn't so tough, and he's merely a quick bump in the road before we meet the game's first real boss Pokemon, the Frenzied Noble Cleaver. In Pokemon Legends Arceus, each of the game's 5 areas feature 2 Wardens, each of them dedicated to a certain special Pokemon. Of the 2 special Pokemon in each area, one helps you on your quest by becoming a ride Pokemon used to traverse the landscape, and the other serves as the area boss that you'll need to defeat to clear the area. Let's use this as an opportunity to talk about boss fights in general. Bosses in this game are noble Pokemon who appear frenzied, meaning they are acting erratically, imbued by a yellow lightning struck down from the sky. Early in the game, the prevailing wisdom is that these events are the doing of Almighty Sinnoh, and many theorize that the frenzied nobles are a test for humans sent by Almighty Sinnoh in order to help them reevaluate their relationship with Pokemon. But more about this later. I think the boss fights are some of the weakest parts of Legends Arceus from a gameplay standpoint. They are certainly a spectacle, as it's thrilling to see the fearsome frenzied Pokemon and its various attacks. The game even borrows the classic on-screen naming technique from the Zelda series to add even more importance to the encounter. But every boss fight is essentially boiled down to press the dodge button at the right time. I mean, this is fair enough, as the game's action controls are not very nuanced, probably on purpose to maintain the game's simplicity. So I wouldn't call them outright bad, but their simplicity can make certain fights grow tiresome quickly. What I do appreciate about the fights, however, is their thoughtful progression, as each fight helps to teach key concepts and builds upon the last as the game goes on. For example, I thought Cleaver was a great first boss. Having only 2 highly telegraphed attacks, Cleaver was perfect to help players learn the big ideas these boss fights would revolve around. Throwing soothing bombs, just like you would a Pokeball, and utilizing the dodge roll. Cleaver charges his dash slowly, giving the player ample time to throw bombs, and provides a distinct visual and audio cue when he's about to charge forward, making it easy for the player to understand dodge roll timing. Cleaver's imposing figure and powerful attacks helps maintain a level of excitement so experienced players aren't completely bored, yet the encounter is simple enough that it allows beginners to experiment and learn the vital dodge timing needed to take on some of the game's later, more difficult bosses. Hisui and Lilligant's inescapable AoE attack helps teach the player that the roll dodge isn't just a mobility tool, it also has invincibility frames. We need to know this in order to avoid seemingly undodgeable attacks like hers. After learning about the short-lived invincibility given by the dodge roll, the fight becomes a piece of cake, but it's a necessary moment that introduces this important concept. Once you have the basics down, the next fight with Hisui and Arcanine marks the start of a difficulty spike, as it essentially combines the attacks of Cleaver and Lilligant inside an arena that's much smaller and more awkwardly shaped. Hisui and Electrode ramps up the difficulty even more, as it introduces a new style of attack, homing projectiles. This frenzied noble sends out balls of energy laser focused on you, which prove to be much more fearsome than any attack seen prior. Dodging Electrode's homing attacks requires even better timing than what was needed to beat Lilligant or Arcanine, and are a precursor to what you'll eventually face at the very end of the game, during your epic encounter with Arceus, which is by far the longest and most challenging fight in the entire game. I do want to touch upon one more mechanic used in these boss fights. At certain points during an encounter, when a frenzied Pokemon is sufficiently stunned, you're able to send in one of your own Pokemon to do battle with it. I found this particular aspect of the boss fights to be pretty clumsy. Granted, I do understand why it exists, to help hold on to the sense that this is indeed a Pokemon battle, but to me it seems unnecessary. I don't think it's very successful in this regard, as it's just an awkward interruption to what is otherwise an action game boss fight. Thankfully, if desired, the Pokemon battle aspect of these encounters can be completely skipped, as you're able to take down bosses relying solely on throwing bombs. Toward the later half of the game, I ended up much preferring to ignore the Pokemon battle sections entirely, relying just on the soothing bombs like I mentioned. I really enjoy learning boss patterns and mastering fights in action games, so this was the better approach for me. And despite boss fights being one of the weakest gameplay elements in Legends Arceus, there was just enough of that rewarding trial and error pattern recognition that I love so much about action game bosses to keep things interesting. Mind you, these aren't Metroid or Castlevania bosses, or anything even close to that, but I did find a few of these fights to be kinda difficult. Late game bosses like Hisui and Avalugg, and the final confrontation with Arceus are two that really stick out in my mind. The key motivator of events in Legends Arceus is the mysterious deity Almighty Sinnoh. Learning more about the Almighty Sinnoh is a common thread that binds every character in the story together. However, the differing beliefs around the deity is a major source of the game's conflict. Both the Diamond and Pearl clans have lived in the Hisui region for generations. As some of the earliest settlers of what is now modern-day Sinnoh, these people inhabited this land and formed sects based on their specific beliefs about the Almighty Sinnoh. The Diamond Clan, who originally crossed the sea from a faraway region and settled into the Crimson Mirelands, believes that Almighty Sinnoh steers the passage of time. The clan is led by the brave and intelligent Adaman, who holds a strong belief that Almighty Sinnoh, the force behind the full expanse of time, created the universe and the land of Hisui. Adaman and other members of the clan have never seen Almighty Sinnoh, but they know of certain Pokemon who have a special connection to the ancient deity. These are the noble Pokemon that Hisui's wardens are sworn to protect. The Pearl clan has very similar origins to the Diamond clan, having also settled into Hisui to venerate the Almighty Sinnoh. They made their home in the Alabaster Icelands, and are now led by a talented yet self-doubting young leader, Irida. The group's main distinction from the Diamond clan is they believe the Almighty Sinnoh to rule over all space. The vast size of the universe, including the wide Hisui region, they believe is representative of the Almighty Sinnoh's power. The two groups don't always disagree, however. Both being early settlers to the land and hoping to live in peace among Pokemon, the clans don't encourage the use of Pokeballs like the game's third main faction, the Galaxy Team, does. The clans both see Pokemon being stored inside Pokeballs as a confusing and barbaric practice. This seems to be a very formative time in the history of the region. Conflict between the Diamond and Pearl clans is currently lesser than it ever has been. The groups were more fiercely opposed in the past, but it's more peaceful now. There's still a conflict in ideology and quite a bit of bad blood, but now the two groups feel that they must unite forces for the greater good, to combat the dangers posed by the frenzied Pokemon who have been struck by the yellow lightning. As both are wholly dedicated leaders, Adaman and Irida's personalities are driven by reverence for Almighty Sinnoh's relationship to time and space respectively. And boy do they let you know it. Their dialogue throughout the game is riddled with references to time or space. They can hardly say a sentence without riffing on something related to the two forces. You'd think this would get annoying, but it's honestly really charming and makes their dialogue in particular much more enjoyable to read. The constant references are used as a successful device to continuously remind us of the ideological differences between the two factions. We get their struggle fully illustrated in a tongue-in-cheek way during this early conversation between the two, where they both use space and time related jokes to take jabs at each other. This is really well-written, funny dialogue, and this type of stuff exists throughout the entire game. I think these two are awesome characters. Of course, the real strength of Legends Arceus is in the exploration and gameplay, but in my opinion, the characters don't get nearly enough credit. They're a fantastic complement to the rest of the experience. So where do we, as the player character, fit into the mix? As previously mentioned, we are a mysterious time traveler, suffering from amnesia who crash-landed in the Hisui region from another time in Pokemon history. We are found by the Galaxy Team and quickly become a part of that group, a dedicated bunch of researchers headquartered in Jubilite Village. As a member of the Galaxy Team, we use special Pokeballs to capture Pokemon specimens. Galaxy members want to coexist peacefully with Pokemon, just like the two clans. However, they take more of a research-focused angle. The Galaxy Team believes that the best way to achieve harmony with Pokemon is to get to know them better, thus completing the Pokedex. The Galaxy Team are interlopers in the Hisui region, as they settled there sometime after the Diamond and Pearl clans did. While there is some residual bad blood between the Diamond and Pearl clans as I mentioned, the Galaxy Team tries their hardest to remain neutral. They represent science and reason more than any single ideological belief. The home of the Galaxy Team and the main hub for the entire adventure is Jubilite Village. As we can clearly tell by the name, this is the predecessor of modern-day Sinnoh's biggest metropolitan area, Jubilife City. Jubilife serves as the player's home base, where we can access things like item shops, our Pokemon storage, and even a bulletin board that displays currently available missions and side quests. The player character even has their own sleeping quarters located in Jubilife Village. Most of the game's important NPCs reside at the Galaxy headquarters, including Commander Silene, who, based on your Pokedex progress, is able to grant you new research levels, and Commander Komodo, who is integral at progressing the story missions. It's from Jubilife that we're able to venture out into one of the game's 5 main explorable areas. Main story events generally take place in these areas, and the game will progress as you meet each area's wardens and learn more about its special Pokemon. The Obsidian Fieldlands see us meeting Wardens Mai and Lian, who we talked about earlier. But as new areas open up as a result of our story progress, we come into contact with even more wardens and their respective Pokemon. In the Crimson Mirelands, we meet Caliba from the Pearl Clan and Ursaluna. Caliba is very cold and standoffish toward the player character at first, likely due to being stuck in her ways at her old age. We meet Caliba when we're tasked to find out what is troubling Ursaluna, the special Pokemon under her watch. Caliba is convinced that she doesn't need our help, but we eventually win her favor after retrieving the wall fragment stolen from the Solaceon ruins by the group of female bandits, the Misfortunes. Lilligant, in its new Hisuian form, is the noble Pokemon we're tasked to quell on our journey through the Mirelands. To complete this task, we are aided by Arezu, her brave, red-headed warden. Arezu cares deeply for Lilligant, and the team seem to have an almost sisterly relationship. The kind-hearted Arezu attempts to make bombs to quell Lilligant herself, but injures herself in the process. After we save the day and help to quell the frenzied Lilligant, Arezu puts her talents to good use and becomes an apprentice at the hair salon in Jubilite Village. The next area we venture into is the Cobalt Coastlands, where we quickly meet Palina and Arcanine. Palina was high up in the running to become the next leader of the Pearl Clan, but narrowly lost out to Irida. A strong-willed female warden, she is a hero who saved the life of a Growlithe pup who rushed into deep waters in an attempt to save its parent, the former noble Arcanine, from being washed away in a storm. While in the end, Arcanine could not be saved, Palina's watchful guidance played a huge role in making sure its pup returned safe. Now she is in charge of two Growlithe, one who's outwardly brave, and another, the offspring of the noble, who appears to be very cowardly. Palina knows the Growlithe is traumatized and doesn't force it to become the new noble, despite outward pressure from the Pearl Clan to do so. She always has the best interest of the Pokemon in mind, and this kindness eventually pays off, as when her larger pup is stolen by the Misfortune bandits, the shy pup confronts them and eventually evolves. Immediately after, via the mysterious yellow lightning sent down from Almighty Sinnoh, the newly evolved Arcanine becomes frenzied, serving as our boss Pokemon for the area. After we successfully quell the Hisuian Arcanine, we find that it now has the courage to separate from Palina and take the mantle from its deceased father to become the new noble Pokemon of the area. Iskin of the Diamond Clan isn't in charge of one Pokemon in particular, but he does have a strong relationship with the Hisui Region who live in the coastlands. This Pokemon is a brand new regional evolution of the Generation 5 fish Pokemon Basculin. Despite his love and care for the region's Pokemon, Iskin at first appears to be afraid of his own shadow, as he will barely show his face when we first visit his home in the Cobalt Coastlands. While talking, he stutters and shows visible fear. He won't even speak the name of the Pokemon Dusclops because he's so terrified of ghosts. Yet, as we learn more about him, we come to find he is deep down very heroic, as he, with the help of Hisui Region, actually saved Palina's life when she rushed into the rough seas to save the pup of the deceased noble Arcanine. Warden Ingo will be a familiar face to longtime Pokemon fans. He's extremely interesting in the sense that he is the only warden, and actually the only character in the game, that's a returning NPC from an older Pokemon title. Ingo is actually a Pokemon trainer from the Battle Subway in Black and White 2, and I was completely baffled as to why he, of all trainers in the Pokemon universe, was pushed directly into Pokemon Legends Arceus. Just like our player character, Ingo is a time traveler and a victim of a space-time rift. Similarly, he seems to have lost all his memories, although they appear to be slowly coming back to him over the course of the story. The Pearl Clan saved Ingo after he crash-landed in Hisui, and he eventually became one of their wardens in the Coronet Highlands. Even though Ingo lost the bulk of his memories, he keeps subtly hinting at what the future of the Pokemon world is like. It seems as though he was sent as a messenger from the future to tell the people of Hisui that Pokemon are not to be feared, and that there is a future where Pokemon do indeed live side by side with people, as trainers and partners. Aside from being one of the tastiest tidbits of fan service, and possibly a hint at the future of the series, more on that later, Ingo is a stoic figure. Despite being from the future, he's pretty old school in the way he talks and thinks. He's warden over Sneasler, Sneasel's new Hisui regional evolution. This Pokemon uses its strong claws to help us scale steep cliffs by, hilariously enough, sticking us into its backpack as he makes the ascent. Look at the eyes! Melly is easily the most abrasive of all the wardens. From the get-go, he's extremely hard-headed and immature. A constant hindrance, he does things like pick up the torches in Turnback Cave, so it becomes difficult for us to move forward in the Highlands, and battles us twice on our ascent up to the Moonview Arena, stalling our mission to aid the noble Pokemon he's entrusted with protecting, the Lord of the Hollow, Electrode. Electrode, in its new part grass-type Hisuian form, is another Pokemon frenzied by Almighty Sinnoh's Yellow Lightning. Melly is very self-righteous, and he's convinced that nothing is wrong with Electrode. He can't accept that something might have happened to it under his care. This is likely the impetus for him being such a thorn in our side during our time in the Coronet Highlands. He even goes to such lengths as refusing to tell us what Hisui and Electrode's favorite food is, essentially blocking us from making the proper bombs needed to quell its frenzy. Diamond Clan leader Adaman eventually talks some sense into him, and he does come around, helping us make the bombs we need. Melly is the most outwardly opposing warden character, which I thought might make him memorable, but in my opinion, his abrasiveness is not a strength. I found Melly to be mostly annoying, with little to no payoff despite his somewhat redemptive character arc. For an NPC with such a strong personality, I was underwhelmed by Melly at the end of the day, and I felt he had a lot more to offer than what the story gave us. Sabi of the Diamond Clan is one of the region's youngest wardens and is best known for being close to Braviary, the great flying-type Pokemon of the region that helps people ride across the skies. Despite Sabi's age, she seems to have a lot of wisdom, although she expresses it in unconventional ways. As Irida mentions, she is a bit flighty, which is very fitting for someone who introduces us to Hisui and Braviary and the power of flight. The rosy-cheeked warden is not afraid of great heights, as for a test to gain her trust, we must chase her to the very peak of the Icelands, the top of Snow Point Temple. Her fearlessness makes her a great pair with the aptly named Braviary, and when we finally reach the two atop the temple, we gain access to one of the most useful ride Pokemon in the entire game. Garrick of the Pearl Clan and the final frenzied noble Avalugg reside in the Alabaster Icelands, the home of the Pearl Clan settlement. Avalugg, which also has a new Hisui regional form, is the largest of the nobles, and is quite fittingly watched over by the largest of the wardens. Garrick is a meathead who frequently trains in frigid temperatures on the large slab of ice known as Avalugg's Legacy. His self-discipline and training regimen is admirable, and after defeating him in battle, we gain his admiration as well. He then agrees to be cooperative in our mission to quell the frenzied Lord Avalugg. Working alongside Garrick, the heart of our mission in the Icelands is to protect people from any dangerous avalanches a Pokemon the size of Avalugg could potentially cause. The enigma that is the almighty Sinnoh lies at the heart of Pokemon Legends Arceus. Every character, it seems, is on a quest to understand it better. The mysterious time travel and amnesia our player character is dealing with gives us a personal connection to the mystery, and heightens our desire to help out in unraveling it. Many are quick to write off the narrative in any Pokemon game, but I have to say I really enjoyed the story of Pokemon Legends Arceus, and feel it's severely underrated. As I progressed through the game and unlocked new explorable areas, finding out which frenzied boss Pokemon that I'd have to face was an absolute joy. This was especially true since they were all brand new Hisuian forms or regional evolutions of familiar Pokemon. Seeing these old favorite Pokemon with a new design or evolution brought a genuine smile to my face. All the new designs are fantastic. I quickly fell in love with standout designs like Cleaver and Electrode, and the game's writers did a great job at making each noble Pokemon fit believably into its environment. Through dialogue with each of the NPCs, it's clear to see their great reverence for the almighty Sinnoh, and their grave concern with the space-time rift affecting the region's Pokemon. This made me want to help them as much as I possibly could, and gave the quest a great sense of importance. The way I was celebrated by the characters after saving each frenzied Pokemon made me really feel like a hero, yet I could still sense the skepticism that many of them, the Galaxy team members in particular, had for me. I was still an outsider who fell from the sky with no memories of my past. Of course this is suspicious. I expected to get fully past this though, as with each successful mission, I felt more and more an accepted part of the community. But the story eventually reached a point where my expectations were subverted in a way I could have never anticipated, with what might be the single most shocking moment in any Pokemon game. All of the skepticism around our player character comes to a head after we quell the noble Avalugg and the sky suddenly turns dark. Due to our mysterious origin, we are blamed for the occurrence and eventually excommunicated from the village. This is a super dark turn of events that I never expected from this game, or even this series for that matter, and this little Shink seems to agree. This sets up the final stretch of the game where we finally get more details about the mysterious forces at play. Of all people, the merchant Volo gives us vital directions at this time. He introduces us to the game's final unlockable area and home to an important character who we have not yet encountered. After our ousting from the village, we begin working from the ancient retreat, where our temporary lodging is located. Captain Silene shows us her soft side after our banishing, and is even kind enough to go behind the commander's back and offer her beloved Abra as a Pokemon teleportation method. This allows us to continue to access our Pokemon stored in the stables at the village. Neat. During our time at the retreat, we get a lesson from the mysterious woman Kojita, an expert on Almighty Sinnoh who seems to have a deep connection to the lore of the region. Kojita proves to be our perfect ally during this situation, as she instructs us about our need to obtain a legendary artifact, the Red Chain, to help set things on a path back to normal. To do this, we must visit the region's 3 lakes and seek out the legendary Pokemon living at each: the Lake Spirits, Azelf, Mesprit, and Uxie. Each of these legendary Pokemon has a different trial meant to test us, but the completion of all 3 will grant us with the Red Chain. This is not an easy mission, but luckily the 2 clan leaders, Adaman and Irida, who don't completely hate us at this point, each offer their kind help in the process. Heart-wrenchingly though, we can only accept the help of one of the 2. I say heart-wrenchingly because I grew to love both characters over the course of the adventure. Interestingly, there's no real difference in story events depending on your choice between the 2 leaders though. The game hypes this up as a really big decision, but the only major difference ends up being whether you face Dialga or Palkia in the final showdown atop Mount Coronet. I chose Adaman, so my final fight was against Palkia. Choosing Irida would have led me to fighting Dialga. That's it. In a way, it's nice that we really don't miss out on any content based on our decision here. But it's also a bit disappointing that the decision doesn't have more of a story consequence. There'd be more incentive toward replaying the game if choosing the other path would lead to a different ending for the story. Once we collect the Red Chain and return to the village, it's discovered that Kamado has assembled forces to travel to the peak of Mount Coronet to investigate a Pokemon spotted there by the space-time rift. We quickly follow and face Kamado in battle near the top. Our victory causes Kamado to apologize, and we're officially back in good graces at Jubilife. There are bigger fish to fry now though, as the legendary Pokemon, Dialga or Palkia depending on your choice, has appeared on the mountain. This looks to finally be that showdown with Almighty Sinnoh we've been eagerly awaiting. We face the legendary Pokemon in battle and eventually capture it, but just as we think we've solved the world's problems, that Pokemon's counterpart, either Dialga or Palkia, appears on the summit in a rage. The team retreats, realizing they have no chance to face the legend at the moment. After some research, Professor Laventon crafts a special Pokeball, an Origin Ball, created to be particularly effective at capturing the other legendary Pokemon. Laventon's handiwork proves to be successful, as we manage to capture the Pokemon, in its slick-looking new Origin form mind you, on our subsequent trip back up the mountain. It's here when we finally think all is well, as we end up back in Jubilife Village at a festival to celebrate our successes. However, it's following the festival when the true endgame begins. The merchant Volo, who has shown an eager interest in the various colored plates we've been accumulating after our encounters with noble and legendary Pokemon, tasks us with collecting the remaining ones. He tells us about Giratina, a legendary Pokemon on the same level as Dialga and Palkia, who holds another one of the plates. Once we obtain every plate aside from Giratina's, Volo takes us up to Mount Coronet, where he reveals his true intentions. Plot twist, Volo has just been using us to obtain the plates so he himself could get in contact with the true Almighty Sinnoh. In other words, the deity who created Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina, the game's namesake and god of all Pokemon, Arceus. He wants to summon Arceus and use its power for a nefarious purpose, to destroy the world as we know it and create a new one where he's king. Well, that just got dark, didn't it? It's at this moment when Volo goes full mad. His appearance even changes from humble merchant to power-hungry madman who styles his hair in 2 distinct spikes, just like the shape of Arceus' head. Volo didn't just have a passing interest in Hisui's lore and origins, he wanted to play a role in it. He's obsessed with Arceus and wants to be God alongside it. Upon this revelation, we face him and his Pokemon team at the apex of the region in what is by far the game's most grueling battle. I thought this fight would be a cakewalk, especially with my own high-level Pokemon team, but I was sorely mistaken and lost pretty badly on my first attempt. The battle against Volo's regular Pokemon is straightforward enough, but at the end, he actually managed to summon the legendary Pokemon Giratina to fight on his behalf. This is where the fight really ramps up, as we learn about the game's second biggest surprise. Once we manage to knock out Giratina, the Pokemon changes to its origin form for a full second phase. Most of my team was already exhausted from the long battle, so this final phase really took me as a shock. My initial strategy, or lack thereof, proved to be ineffective for a fight of this length and magnitude. I had to revamp my strategy for the second time around. On my subsequent attempt, I aimed to take the least damage possible from Volo's other Pokemon, to ensure I had the most possible ammunition left to use on Origin Form Giratina, who was clearly the big hurdle of this fight. In a tight one, I pulled off the win my second time around, but I was certainly surprised by this battle's difficulty. I really enjoyed the surprise and the challenge here because it added to the tension and importance of the occasion. Volo's a great villain character. As you encounter him throughout the game, he's very eager to talk to you about deep subjects like the legends of the region, so it's easy to dismiss him as simply an enthusiast and eccentric. He's very sweet and polite, but almost alarmingly so. You can definitely sense a little bit that something is off about him, but he doesn't really give any definitive red flags. That is, until he goes fully manic at the end. He's that classic villain character who you have suspicions about all the way through the story, but are never quite sure about until his true intentions are brought to light. Volo and the entire story post-Dialga and Palkia is a really impressive additional layer to the events of Legends Arceus that in my opinion the game didn't need, but is all the better for it. Now, despite my overall praise for the narrative, the game can be very chatty at times. Dialogue sections are a bit slow, and there are a lot of them. While, like I mentioned, the writing is really high quality and enjoyable, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel, at times, like I wanted to skip it all and just get back to exploring. It's hard to say if this is a result of the game's slow, boring dialogue sequences or the magnetic appeal of exploration and adventure, but ultimately I'd probably say it was a combination of both. As strong as the story is, the game world outshines it in every way. It's because of this that I spent a lot of my playtime completely ignoring the main story and doing other things. Whether that be shiny hunting, working on the Pokedex, capturing alpha Pokemon, creating movesets for my Pokemon team, searching for wisps and unknowns, completing side quests, or simply exploring for the pure fun of it. I went multiple days in play sessions without even thinking about the story, and I was completely happy with that. There's real joy to be had in Legends Arceus by simply exploring, with or without any higher purpose at all. And this is so important. This isn't something totally new to the Pokemon series, as aimlessly exploring is something I would do in many of the older games as well, but it's interesting to note that this phenomenon carries through, even in this very new and different adventure. With Legends Arceus in particular, exploration is further enhanced and encouraged due to the vast open nature of the game's areas. At its initial reveal, many touted Legends Arceus to be the fully open-world Pokemon game fans have been clamoring about for years. But in reality, this is not the case. The game's areas are segmented off, and the map is not one interconnected world like many had hoped. For me, this is generally fine, because the areas themselves are so large, exploration doesn't feel hindered in any way. Well, until you want to switch areas. Say you're exploring the Crimson Mire lands but need to visit the Icelands for some reason. This is when you really start to feel the weight of a segmented world. Pokemon Legends' fast travel system only allows transport between different camps within the same area. It's because of this that the area switching is very slow. If you are out on a field mission and want to switch areas, you must first fast travel back to a camp, then end your excursion and report your findings back to the professor. Only then are you able to head back to Jubilife, and from there you can again leave the gate and select a different area to travel to. It's easy to see how this can be a slog, and it makes me wonder why we couldn't just fast travel everywhere and have our excursion progress saved until the next time we talk to the professor. It makes me think, was this kind of full map fast travel system not possible from a technical standpoint, or was there some sort of design reason behind it? We really don't know, so speculating about this is, in a way, grasping at straws. But I certainly would have preferred if we had the freedom to fast travel to any area at our leisure. As I mentioned a bit earlier, one of my main reasons for veering from the main story events was to tackle side quests. I just want to say up front, I love that we have actual side missions to complete. I'm thrilled by the idea that we can now complete cataloged side quests outside of the main story. I found it really relaxing to kick back and go down the list, knocking out a series of side quests. However, I do think these quests deserve some criticism. First of all, I think that they can be an extremely mixed bag. Some are super interesting and creative. For example, waiting for a full moon in the Highlands to experience a Clefairy's moonlight dance. Or probably the game's best side mission, the Sea's Legend, which sees you using a hint from present-day Sinnoh's Canalave library in the actual BDSP game, I know, mind blown, to formulate a party of Weasel, Mantike, and the new Qwilfish regional evolution Overqwil, who wasn't even an announced Pokemon at the time of BDSP's launch, by the way. Having these specific Pokemon in your party allows you to unlock a cave in the coastlands which contains Fione and the mythical Pokemon Manaphy. I can't help but feel that this side quest is an example of the PLA developers simply having some fun, and it really reminds me of the steps needed to unlock the Reggie trio in Generation 3. The key difference this time though, the hint needed to complete the quest exists in a completely different video game. How cool is that? While I feel for those who didn't buy BDSP or might have missed the library hint, it doesn't change the fact that this is an extremely cool way to obtain a Pokemon, and a nod to an important piece of Pokemon history. Everyone's crazy schoolyard theories on how to find and catch, for example, Mew in Generation 1, Celebi in Generation 2, and all of the other subsequent unattainable legendary and mythical Pokemon. These types of urban legends shared between players are a pillar of what the Pokemon video game franchise was built on, and playing more into this type of concept is just an absolutely brilliant touch from Game Freak. But on the flip side here, there are dozens of side quests that don't feel nearly as inspired. Sure, it's unrealistic to expect that every quest out of the 100 plus available is going to be a home run, but many really do feel like filler. Several of the missions are simply fetch quests to catch a certain Pokemon or craft a certain item for an unimportant NPC. This provides little to no thrill for little to no reward, especially as we progress later into the adventure. This leads me into the last point I want to make about side quests. The item reward system really tails off late game. Many of the quest reward items will really only be useful early on in your adventure. And as you progress in the story and accumulate more and more items, the 5 Vivichokes I get for finally completing Quest 17 isn't gonna cut it as a satisfying reward. I understand there probably isn't a way around this, unless there is going to be a system where quest rewards scaled with your research level or something like that. But I did notice that especially toward the end of the game, I was completing the side quests for the intrinsic reward of simply checking them off as complete, rather than any unlockable or item reward that they would grant me. Again, this isn't necessarily bad, as I'm glad my unfinished side quests gave me something to strive for deep into the post-game, but in terms of getting anything of value out of them, many left a lot to be desired. If there was one single main idea to Pokemon Legends Arceus, a describe the game in one sentence type of thing, it would be something like, you aim and throw Pokeballs in the overworld. The importance of this can't be understated. Legends Arceus transforms the Pokemon experience from revolving around traditional turn-based encounters to hunting down and aiming projectiles at the Pokemon you find in the wild. It introduces action and stealth elements to a process that, up until now, was done via a simple menu command. This is the biggest fundamental change in Pokemon Legends Arceus compared to its predecessors. And despite my hesitation pre-release on if this was going to work, I'm happy to say that the developers introduced the overworld catching mechanic in a way that I really enjoyed. Catching in Legends Arceus is not a brain-dead aim and throw system either. Some Pokemon are easy to snag, but the process can get pretty nuanced. Especially for the more difficult species, you need to be careful and put some thought into your approaches. Pokemon that are easily frightened or easily agitated will run away or fight back respectively. This is why it is key to make sure you're able to stay incognito when approaching a Pokemon. The crouch mechanic softens your footsteps, and items like smoke bombs and stealth sprays can help with this as well. They make it easier to sneak up on highly alert Pokemon, or ones wide out in the open without any cover nearby to help you get close. There is something thrilling about sneaking around in Legends Arceus. It really makes you feel like a guest in a Pokemon's natural environment. Trying to observe them while being as quiet as possible really heightens the immersion. Of course, Legends also gives us the ability to engage in traditional turn-based battles with wild Pokemon, and here we can throw Pokeballs at them from the menu, the old-fashioned way. However, I really only found myself sending out a Pokemon and trying traditional catching methods as a last resort. When I was really struggling with catching a Pokemon from the overworld, or if I was scared it was going to run away, like with an easily startled shiny for example, that's when I would send in a Pokemon to do battle as a last-ditch effort. It's not that I hated the traditional catching mechanics, but the action elements and increased speed of the process makes overworld catching a really attractive option. So during my playthrough, I tried to stick to that whenever possible. If we happen to revert back to traditional catching mechanics in future games, I feel like catching Pokemon from the overworld will be the most memorable aspect as we think back about Legends Arceus. Legends not only breaks tradition with how you catch Pokemon, but also with why you catch them in the first place. How so? Well, at first, I began my journey to fill my Pokedex in a more traditional manner, only catching one of every species. I was also doing a lot of battling wild Pokemon to raise my party levels. The usual Pokemon stuff. This is how I traditionally play the games. But I quickly realized in Pokemon Legends that doing the usual wasn't quite right. Now, of course, it wasn't completely wrong either. I could have made it through the game just fine playing in my traditional style, but I ended up realizing that my original approach was not ideal to the style of gameplay that Legends Arceus system design was encouraging. Instead, what I found to be a much better approach was being really liberal with my Pokemon catching. I didn't have to worry so much about already having a Pokemon or how many Pokeballs I had left, because A, releasing duplicate Pokemon in this game grants you all important grit items, which help raise a Pokemon's effort levels, a brand new set of stats in this game that we'll get into more detail on later, and B, in most cases, catching multiple Pokemon of the same species helps fill up research levels in the Hisui Pokedex. In this way, Legends actually feels less like Sword and Shield and pretty similar to Let's Go, as in those games your only option besides run away is to catch every wild Pokemon, even if you already have it. And quite similarly, these Pokemon could be traded in for candies that help raise stat values. It's essentially the same here in Pokemon Legends, except replace stat candies with grid items. And to make matters even better, the more you fill out research entries in your Pokedex, the more money you earn as a reward for each excursion, which is then money you can use to buy even more Pokeballs, which lets you catch even more Pokemon, and the loop goes on and on. This is some really clever system design that encourages the game's best attribute, exploring the world and catching its Pokemon. Pokemon Legends Arceus plays to its own strengths, something which all video games should aim to do. The satisfying act of catching Pokemon is emphasized by the game's very design to be done as frequently as possible. This is a core change I was not expecting, but it ended up being extremely effective in my opinion. I'll take this as a chance to explain the catching methods I found most effective throughout my adventure. Though I experimented with pretty much every item in Pokeball during the course of the game, my ultimate Pokemon catching strategy ended up being very cut and dry. My inventory eventually devolved into the most minimal and efficient one I could carry. Once my Pokemon levels became high enough that I was not relying on healing items to prolong my field excursions, my inventory usually consisted of solely 3 items. I'd constantly stock Wing Balls, Leaden Balls, and Sticky Gloves. I realize continuing to use Tier 2 balls is probably a little weird for late game, but let me explain my reasoning. First, I had to make use of one of the fast-flying balls, either Feather, Wing, or Jet. These are clearly the best type of projectile, and all fly really well through the air. So these types of balls provide the most accurate experience when aiming at Pokemon in the overworld. I found these balls to be the most important items on my journey, and I caught the vast majority of my Pokemon inside balls of this type. The real question here is, why did I tend to stick to Wing Balls as opposed to Jet Balls, even deep into postgame? I know Jet Balls have a better catch rate, but I felt that Jet Balls weren't so much of an improvement over Wing Balls that it was worth using nearly double the resources to craft them. I felt like wing balls, especially working in tandem with leaden balls, which I'll get into in a bit, served my purposes just fine. Jet balls were nice to use once in a while, but I ultimately felt they weren't worth the investment. The same logic explains why I tended to carry leaden balls, the tier 2 version of heavy balls, instead of the tier 3 version gigaton balls. When I really wanted to catch a fully evolved Pokemon in Alpha or something with a higher than usual catch rate, I would nix the wing balls and turn to the Sticky Glob leaden ball combo. This was also my main catching strat if the Pokemon was aggressive or skittish. I would first stun it with Sticky Globs. This usually took only one hit, but sometimes up to 3 or 4 with the angrier species. And then when they were immobilized from the globs, I would walk around behind them and chuck a leaden ball at their back. Sometimes it would take 2 to 3 tries to finally nab the Pokemon, but in the vast majority of cases, leadens worked like a charm using this method. I realized Gigaton balls would have worked best, but again, leadens were far cheaper to make, and totally fine for my purposes. I was happy to use the money I saved by using tier 2 balls to buy my Sticky Globs outright from the vendor, since Sticky Glob crafting materials are kind of a pain to gather. If I wanted to, I could have grinded the Misfortune battles, which award 4 nuggets I then could have sold, but during my time with the game, I never purposely grinded for money. As a result, I might have been more financially strapped than others during my playthrough, but I actually think it was better this way. I wanted to focus on exploration. Another really clever bit of system design in PLA is the implementation of lost satchels. At their core, satchels are a multiplayer feature, albeit your interactions are never directly with other players. Rather, if your Nintendo Switch is connected to the internet during play and you end up blacking out, in other words, you die to a wild Pokemon, you will drop a satchel containing some of the items that were in your inventory. The catch is, you can't go back and pick up your own satchel. You have to rely on other trainers from around the world to find your satchel, which will then send the lost items back to your storage. Now, I don't love the satchel mechanic because of the items they save you. This never really mattered to me unless it was one of the few times I lost a nugget or something. Instead, what I really appreciated about satchels is the incentive they provide for you just to go out and explore. Collecting other people's satchels grants you merit points, a currency used to purchase some rare items from a vendor in Jubilite Village, so they're always worthwhile to pick up. If I happened to see some lost satchels on my map, I would almost always take a ride over and pick them up. In most cases, it wasn't that I really needed the merit points, but satchels were a nice, simple reason to just go exploring with no larger objective. Providing just this tiny bit of incentive is such a subtle, yet effective way to encourage map exploration, and I can't even tell you how many times I had a rare alpha or even a shiny Pokemon pop up while I was en route to a satchel. This casual, explorative type play got even better with the version 1.1.0 update and the addition of massive mass outbreaks, which I'll talk about in more depth later. To this day, I still enjoy hopping on Braviary to quickly fly over all the massive mass outbreaks, just to see what kind of Pokemon appear. You can get some really special spawns from time to time, so it never really gets old. Another smart addition that shakes up the exploration a bit is space-time distortions. These rifts to another dimension appear on an area's map after a certain amount of time passes during your excursion. Since these are a break in a space-time continuum, the distortions cause several rare types of items and fierce alpha Pokemon to spawn. I remember a space-time distortion was actually the cause of my first ever blackout. It was early on, and I was completely overwhelmed by the alphas that appeared. In spite of the danger, it's always best to check out space-time distortions when they occur, because not only are you able to pick up colored shards and rare evolution items from them, but you can also find some rare Pokemon types there. The fact that these are distortions in the fabric of time and space allow for some really cool logic-bending Pokemon spawns to occur. For example, higher technological species that don't make sense to appear in ancient Hisui, like the digital Pokemon Porygon or the electric-type Magnemite line, can appear here. Clearly, these are Pokemon of the future. The other side of the time spectrum is also true here, as space-time distortions can be a rift into the past, causing the appearance of long-extinct Pokemon, like the 2 Sinnoh fossils, Shieldon and Cranidos. Alpha Pokemon are special spawns that frequently appear after quelling an area's frenzied noble. These Pokemon are bigger than usual with glowing red eyes. They are typically stronger stat-wise and can use special moves that regular species cannot. I'm still not sure how I feel about alpha Pokemon. For one thing, it is cool that there's another form that can potentially enhance the rarity of wild Pokemon you encounter. Like, of course, when I found this alpha shiny Gardevoir, I popped off super hard. Plus, encountering large, high-level alpha Pokemon early on in the game was super cool, and a little bit frightening. I'll never forget running into the alpha Rapidash early on in the Fieldlands. I kind of equate it to running into a Lionel or something similar early on in Breath of the Wild, but I'm not sure it's the alpha mechanic that created these moments. The same types of moments could have been created if the concept of alpha Pokemon never existed, but instead these were just large, high-level regular Pokemon. And this is, I think, what gets me to my ultimate stance on alphas. After the initial allure of alphas died down, especially toward the endgame, they just didn't do it for me in the same way. There's really no difference to owning an alpha Pokemon compared to a regular one too. If you snag one early game, they're higher level, may have stronger effort levels and no different moves, but it's nothing a regular Pokemon can't train up to. In the end, literally the only difference an alpha has over a regular Pokemon is this little mark on the stats menu plus its larger appearance. But those are really just aesthetics, so yeah, alphas are cool but a little underwhelming when all is said and done. I didn't make it a priority to seek out any alphas during my journey. If I happen to catch one, cool. If I didn't, no big deal. My primary usage of alpha Pokemon was battling against them to train my party. They give more EXP than regular Pokemon and also drop experience candy and grit items, two super useful consumables that I always love having on hand. While I didn't always find catching wild alphas worth it, I did battle them whenever I could. Early on during our journey, Adaman gives us the Celestica Flute, which allows us to call upon some of the region's special Pokemon as rideable mounts, each helping us accomplish certain feats while exploring. Weirdeer allows us to travel faster on land. It also has a leap that travels a good distance. It needs to be said how satisfying the sound of galloping hooves and the slight HD rumble on the Switch controller is while riding Weirdeer. Early game, Weirdeer is extremely helpful and versatile. Correctly timed jumps can even help you scale small cliffs or clear bodies of water that would otherwise be uncrossable. So finding the right spots to jump with Weirdeer can score you early access to certain areas. The subsequent ride Pokemon all serve a unique purpose as well. Ursaluna helps uncover unseen treasures. Its slow speed and the insignificance of the uncovered items made Ursaluna the least useful of the mounts, but a fun novelty nonetheless. Basculegion allows for traversal over bodies of water, which is awesome as it opens up the maps for a ton more exploration. However, I try to avoid catching Pokemon while on Basculegion whenever possible. The aiming while on the water is really finicky. It just never felt good. Sneasler opens up the map in a similar way, allowing us to scale cliffs. And finally, Braviary allows us to explore the maps from, quite literally, a bird's eye view. As the final ride Pokemon, Braviary was super rewarding to unlock. It's a very versatile mount with a variety of use cases. It allows for increased visibility when scouring the map for Pokemon. It's also the fastest way to travel and allows you to, for the most part, ignore any terrain obstacles. And Braviary can be used in a pinch to remove yourself from any dangerous situations, allowing you to zoom up into the air in an instant. Braviary saved me countless times from what would have been a guaranteed blackout without its help. In a game with explorable areas this large, of course it's great to have rideable mounts. Not only does it make transportation faster, it makes it more varied and interesting. And though some mounts are more useful than others, they're all useful in the right scenarios. They're fun to use too, especially Weirdeer and Braviary. There are even some timed balloon popping challenges available using some of the more fun to use ride Pokemon, which put your mastery of each's control scheme to the test. I thought these were a fun side event, and a nice change of pace from the typical exploration. The item rewards were nothing to shake a stick at though, like pretty much all quest rewards in this game. One thing I don't love about ride Pokemon, however, is having to switch between them using the D-pad. It always felt a bit clumsy, and just to add another control complaint where I can stick it in, why is it that when we click in the left stick to run as the player character, we get tired after a few seconds and stop? What's the point of that? Especially in a game with a world as big as this, why can't we just run endlessly? I mean, the run button was a thing all the way back in Generation 3. Maybe it's to heighten the value of riding Weirdeer, as the faster speeds it grants you wouldn't have as big of an impact if the player character could already run fast? I don't know. Still, I find the lack of infinite run to be an odd decision, and it's exacerbated when navigating the deceivingly large Jubilife village. If I want to run from one end of the main street to the other, it takes quite a bit of time just staring at my character running over there. It's like a mini Xenoblade run, if you know what I mean. Plus, you can't use any of the mounts while in the village, so we have no choice but to run through it on foot. Being able to fast travel to different points of the village helps a little bit, but overall, movement through Jubilife is slow, and I sometimes dreaded having to go from the crafting materials shop stall all the way to the main gate on foot, and vice versa, which is something I did quite frequently. Not a huge deal, but I have to note, the clumsiness of navigating Jubilife did end up being an everyday annoyance. The dream of Professor Laventon and our secondary goal outside of completing the main story is to record Pokédex data for as many species as possible. This notion is echoed once again when we complete the main story and come face to face with Almighty Sinnoh, who entrusts us with the task to seek out all Pokémon. It's one thing to encounter and capture all the species native to the Sinnoh region, as this is quite a task in itself, but Legends Arceus takes Pokédex completion a step further, introducing a new mechanic called research tasks. Depending on how many research points you've earned by completing tasks on your excursions, you'll earn points toward the next star rank. At various point milestones, Captain Silene will award you with a higher star rank. Researchers with a higher star rank have access to better crafting recipes, making it easier to get your hands on better Pokeballs and other useful tools for your excursions. To be completely honest, it took me a while to warm up to the concept of research tasks. I was completing them when I could, but the concept had me slightly confused. I didn't see the point of completing them at first. I just saw them as an optional extra step in the Pokédex, which technically they are if you're not going for 100% completion. When I first started Pokemon Legends, I didn't think I'd even want to max out my Pokédex. If anything, I thought I'd be satisfied with capturing all the Pokemon and calling it a day. But as I went on with the game, I fell in love with it so much that I couldn't help but want to do more. Ultimately, I completed almost everything. My crowning achievement was getting Research level 10 for my entire Pokédex to obtain the Shiny Charm and the game's true ending. Though the process was tedious, I liked that it encouraged me to interact with every Pokemon species in some way. Without research tasks, I would have never done things like use Stealth Rock with Bastiodon 8 times, but here I was doing the most random things with the most random Pokemon, all for the sake of research. By the end of my journey, my Pokédex was complete with every Pokemon being Research level 10, the Unknowns and Wisps all accounted for, and every side quest checked off, aside from a few of the DLC Paths of Solitude. Maybe someday I'll find the desire to polish those off. That being said, I certainly got my money's worth from Pokemon Legends Arceus, and a lot of that was due to the addition of research tasks. I could even go back and get all perfect Pokédex pages if I wanted to. So all in all, it's a positive inclusion that adds a lot to the game. While I'll definitely be taking a break from the game after this video, I do anticipate jumping back into Hisui someday, whether it be to complete those final DLC quests like I said, for some shiny hunting, or simply for adventure's sake. I also haven't got all of the old verses, so that's something else to do if I ever come back. If you couldn't already tell, there's no shortage of things to do in Pokemon Legends Arceus. I've told friends this somewhat jokingly, but I actually believe, with no lie or exaggeration, that I could happily play this game for the remainder of the year. Now it's time to talk about something I've somehow neglected for this long: the battle system. Despite my glowing praise for the game overall, I think the battle system is the weakest part of PLA. It really didn't have to be this way either. Compared to a more traditional Pokemon game, battles have been fundamentally changed, and it kinda baffles me as to why. First of all, the way attacks play out during battle got a major overhaul. Pokemon Legends still features the turn-based battles we've come to expect from the series, but turn order no longer shifts consistently between two Pokemon. Now, depending on speed stat, Pokemon can attack twice in a row, even up to 3 or sometimes 4 times consecutively. Turn order is now displayed on screen, as a new addition called the Action Order shows the chronological order of events that will take place during battle. The Action Order can be influenced by another new mechanic, Battle Styles. These two elements working in tandem really show how much different Legends Arceus is when it comes to battles. Pokemon are now able to master a move, which is done by either using the move repeatedly in battle, essentially leveling it up, or the quicker way, working with Zissou at the Jubilife training grounds, who can help a Pokemon master moves automatically at the cost of 1 seed of mastery. Generally, I found it easier to train moves naturally, as it doesn't take all that long and seeds of mastery aren't super easy to come by. But regardless of method, once a Pokemon masters a move, it will then have the option to use that move in either the strong or agile style. The main differences between the two styles are their effect on move attack power and how often the move will hit within the turn order. Strong style moves are slower, meaning your Pokemon will attack less often, but the hit will do more damage. Meanwhile, agile style causes your Pokemon to attack with a little less power, but more frequently in the turn order. I found agile more useful than strong as a whole. The damage boost from strong was nice, but the chance of attacking twice almost always outweighed it. Of course, I experimented with both over the course of my playthrough and used each style situationally. Agile style gets especially good when it's used on Pokemon with a high speed stat. Some Pokemon who are trained in speed can get to a point where they consistently attack slower Pokemon twice, even 3 times, before an opponent even gets a chance to move. And though I've never seen it myself, I've heard myths about 4 consecutive attacks, which is pretty crazy. Unless the defending Pokemon hard resists you, consecutive attacks are almost always an auto win. So yeah, agile style can get pretty strong. Despite how good they can be, I didn't really make use of the styles until the later stages of my adventure. I don't know, I guess my mind just defaulted to a more traditional way of battling. At the start, I was resistant to the change and pretty much just used the vanilla versions of moves all the time. There's no downside to using battle styles, aside from having to watch this little cutscene here every time, so I really should have used them the entire way through. My lack of battle style usage came back to haunt me during my quest to get all Hisui Dex entries to research level 10. Research tasks for many of the Pokemon in the Dex involve using moves of a certain style numerous times. This resulted in my endgame Dex completion efforts being a whole lot of spamming strong or agile style moves on a myriad of random Pokemon, which took a while but was oddly satisfying. I don't know, there's a certain charm in needing to work with a Pokemon you'd never typically use, like having Perugly do 5 agile style moves or something like that. While they are a strong tactic in the context of this game, I don't really think battle styles bring a whole lot to the big picture of Pokemon battling. If there were other new mechanics that could integrate well with them, then they might be interesting to keep in future titles. But as they are now, I wouldn't want this mechanic to come back again. A new change in PLA that I did find awesome though is the fact that now, once a Pokemon learns an attack, it knows it forever in its bank of stored moves. We can now freely interchange these moves via a simple menu. A Pokemon can still only have 4 moves in total, but now there's no cost to switch moves. It's free, fast, and a lot of the friction is removed that there was in previous games when testing movesets. This is one innovation new to Pokemon Legends Arceus that I certainly hope stays in the games going forward. Despite move selection being quote-unquote modernized, Pokemon abilities were completely stripped from PLA's battle system, and for me, they were sorely missed. A lot of the time, you don't think twice about abilities in a modern Pokemon game. They're just something that's there to add that little extra element in combat. That little trick you might sometimes have up your sleeve is no longer there anymore. You can't rely on Intimidate to lower your opponent's attack at the start of battle. We no longer have to consider a Pokemon having Levitate and resisting ground-type attacks. Weather teams are no longer a thing, etc. It seems minor at first, but as you play Legends Arceus, you start to realize that the lack of abilities is a pretty jarring change. In addition to the removal of abilities, other hallmarks of Pokemon training and battling have also been drastically modified. For example, EVs and IVs, or the effort values and individual values that we've come to know in Pokemon games up until this point, have been completely removed from Legends Arceus. Side note, if you dig down into the math, apparently IVs still technically exist, but they don't affect the final stat, just the base effort level of a Pokemon when it spawns. So we'll still consider them removed. Instead, EVs and IVs have been replaced with a single stat line called effort levels. And just like IVs, there is one effort level value for each of a Pokemon's stats. And just like EVs, effort levels can be trained to increase a Pokemon's stats. However, in Legends, they are not trained through Pokemon battles. Rather, they can be increased using the consumable grit items I mentioned previously. There are 4 levels of grit items, each allowing you to raise your Pokemon's effort levels up to a certain threshold. For example, a Grit Dust will allow you to raise effort levels from 0 to 3, whereas the next step up, Grit Gravel, will allow you to raise them from between 3 and 6, and so on. This goes all the way up to the maximum value, 10. I have to say, this is a nice, easy to understand and streamlined system. It's certainly less grindy than traditional breeding and EV training, which between finding the perfect specimen then EV training by hand is basically a full-time job. Creating the perfect Pokemon is even easier in Legends Arceus than it was in Sword and Shield. All it takes is feeding a Pokemon a series of consumables all the way up to level 10 for each stat. And unlike other games, any Pokemon can make a great candidate to train, since, like I said, IVs don't affect the final stat. Even if it's not the right nature, no worries. Nature mints are easily obtainable from the gardeners in Jubilife Village. Egg moves? Don't worry about it. There's no breeding in this game anyways. So as you can see, Legends Arceus makes it a lot easier for casual players to raise really strong Pokemon. Maximizing a Pokemon to have 10s in each of their effort levels takes 5 to 10 minutes of menuing, as long as you have the required items. This is a lot smaller of a time investment than any sort of stat maximization efforts in past Pokemon games. And it's really helpful for people like me who aren't trying to devote their entire life to playing a single video game. However, the drastically lowered bar also takes away that sense of grind and accomplishment that raising a perfect Pokemon the old-fashioned way gives you. I think this is fine, especially if Legends ends up being a spin-off series anyways, but it could indicate a concerning trend if Pokemon training continues to get easier and easier in the main series going forward. In a vacuum though, I think the effort level system is absolutely brilliant. Not to harp on it again, but I think it's so smart that Legends makes it so we obtain grit items by releasing Pokemon that we've caught. Because of this mechanic, as long as we're going out on excursions and catching Pokemon, there will never be a shortage of grit items at our disposal. So in a way, exploring the world and catching as many Pokemon as we can is effectively the equivalent of EV training. I gotta say, even though Pokemon training is not as detailed and full-featured as what it's been in the past, this whole gameplay loop surrounding effort levels and how to train them is awesome for what it is, and is, in my opinion, a genius bit of design from Game Freak. The intricacies of Pokemon training and the wide breadth of options available in modern Pokemon battle systems is something I'm always in awe of with each new entry in the series. But unfortunately, Legends Arceus completely underwhelmed me in this regard. I understand that Legends is a single-player title, but conversation around the stripped-down battle mechanics can't and shouldn't be avoided. The removal of key systems, plus having no PvP battles, really hollows out Pokemon battling to be a shell of its former self. It really makes the game seem like a spin-off, when I feel like it didn't need to be. A lot of depth was removed, which I'd argue is fine for a one-off single-player adventure-focused title, but with multiplayer battles being a huge part of the series in general, it's not a change I would like to see going forward. High-level Pokemon battles are something I always love to observe as each new game releases, and it's certainly disappointing that in Pokemon Legends Arceus, multiplayer battles aren't even here at all. And even if there was PvP, the relative lack of depth and customization compared to other Pokemon titles suggests to me that competitive would be considerably dumbed down anyways. So clearly, I'm not the biggest fan of Legends Arceus' battle system, but that's made much better due to its lesser focus on battling than any other traditional Pokemon RPG. Sure, you can always battle the wild Pokemon if you want, and there are a series of trainer battles throughout the adventure, but as a whole, it's far less than typical. Aside from the misfortunes every once in a while, there are no NPCs waiting to battle you on any of the maps. Instead, PLA's battles are generally reserved for key story events and side quests. The area where battles are emphasized the most is at the training grounds in Jubilife Village. It's here where we're able to, mostly in the post-game and after the version 1.1.0 update, really test our Pokemon battling mettle. After defeating Arceus for the first time, the player's then able to sleep in the bed located in their home chambers. This unlocks a side mode in which we can confront Arceus and take on a series of battle challenges. Eternal Battle Reverie is a battle gauntlet in which you gain points with each round you win. Points can be used to purchase wishes to help extend your Reverie run. For example, you can purchase things like heals for your Pokemon, restoring PP, or inflicting a status condition on the enemy. However, you want to conserve as many points as you can throughout the challenge, as they also serve as your ultimate reward. Points are cashed in at the end of your run for useful items, including EXP candies, nuggets, grit items, mastery seeds, and more. Battle Reverie is a fun side event with worthwhile rewards, although really long runs can get draining after a while. Despite this, trying to break your high scores can be a fun challenge, and I found myself coming back to it every once in a while throughout the postgame. The mode is nothing life-changing, but similarly to the balloon popping minigames, it's a welcome diversion from the adventure. The Daybreak 1.1.0 update for Legends Arceus includes a series of new side quests, most of which take place at the training grounds in Jubilife City. Talking to Ingo at the training grounds will allow you to take on a series of battle challenges. Some include facing off against ultimate teams from some of the game's most powerful trainers, while others are presented in the form of two unique challenge types. Path of Tenacity has you face off against a handful of the game's tougher NPCs in succession, while Path of Solitude forces you to use only one Pokemon in a series of tricky 1v1 challenges. The path challenges are in some ways rewarding. For example, it's really cool to challenge the final forms of the NPCs you've come to know and love throughout the adventure. But overall, these challenges are, for the most part, just more tasks to take on once you've exhausted everything else to do in the game. Some of the more gimmicky challenges only allow you to use a certain NFE Pokemon, like Bidoof or Magikarp, which you probably don't have on hand at a high enough level to win. So at least in my case, clearing the Path of Solitude battles took quite a bit of grinding. Unless you're a completionist, I'd honestly say stay away from some of these. On the other hand, the rest of the postgame was filled with worthwhile activities. Catching the mythicals and legendaries was enjoyable as a whole, but some encounters were definitely more memorable than others. I have to say too, they all felt pretty underwhelming after the Manaphy side quest, but that was a tough act to follow. I do wish there were more quests like that in the game. It would certainly make catching rare legendary Pokemon more rewarding, as I felt some of these events were far too simple. Take Darkrai for example. He appears via a random stumble-upon cutscene in the Highlands. This wasn't terrible, as it did take me by surprise, but I would have liked to see more lore, story, or gameplay events involved with these encounters. The Weather Trio, for example, were done really well. Catching the three genies, Tornadus, Landorus, and Thundurus, was more satisfying because of the involved process needed to find and obtain them. For example, Thundurus can only be found over the waters of the coastlands during an actual thunderstorm. This was a unique encounter that weaves in the game's weather system and subsequently fits with the Pokemon's theming. I would have loved to see more encounters like this. Why weren't there more weather-based encounters? Plus, catching the genies all involve a miniature boss battle. They deflect Pokeballs at first, so you're prevented from engaging them in battle until you weaken their defenses by dodging their attack patterns in the overworld and whittling down their defenses with something like Sticky Globs or Mud Balls. This made catching the Weather Trio a significant challenge, and it was a rewarding one at that, as presenting the trio to Khajiit at the Ancient Retreat causes her to reveal the existence of an all-new legendary Pokemon, and fourth genie, Enamorus, who's apparently the force behind the Storm of Love? Despite the questionable concept, I do enjoy Enamorus' design, and it was a great surprise to get a brand new member of this beloved trio turned quartet. It can also switch to Etherian form just like the other three. Really, really cool. If you've played this game all the way through, there's a good chance you've encountered a shiny Pokemon. Traditionally, the odds of encountering a shiny are 1 in 4,096. These are pretty long odds, and in Legends Arceus, if the story ended here, it very well might be the case that the guaranteed shiny Ponyta from that side quest might be the only one you see all game. But Legends Arceus introduces some important changes that turn shiny Pokemon encounters from wishful thinking to a more common occurrence. I mean, look at my shiny box. I've never done anything close to this in another Pokemon title, so the increased shiny odds is clearly a noteworthy change. Typically, if I was reviewing a Pokemon title, I wouldn't even discuss shiny Pokemon, as finding them is so rare and such a tiny piece of the experience for most players. But in Legends Arceus, I kinda have to. Not only are we simply more apt to run into shinies in this game, but I also probably spent upwards of 20 hours actively shiny hunting in this game, so it was really core to my experience. And from what I can tell, the same was true for many others. In Legends Arceus, there are some optimal strategies to increase your chances of running into shiny Pokemon. There are two main shiny hunting methods, or at least there were two main methods. Distinctly, there is what I call Old Method, which was available at the game's launch, but is now defunct after updating your game's version to the 1.1.0 Daybreak update, which launched on Pokemon Day, February 27th. And there is now New Method, I know, super creative names, which is currently the best shiny hunting method in Legends Arceus. I've used both methods successfully, and they each have certain advantages and disadvantages. First, there is Old Method. In order to accomplish Old Method, a few important steps had to be taken. First, you had to run in and out of Jubilife Village, re-rolling the mass outbreaks that would appear on the world map. When an icon appears of a Pokemon you want to target, head into the area and immediately save. This will save that particular Pokemon outbreak in the game's memory. Once you do this, you're free to check the outbreak for a shiny. If nothing, reset the game. Go back to the village to refresh the shiny odds, rinse, and repeat. If I had to choose one shiny hunting method over the other, I prefer Old Method over New Method. While I love exploring MMOs, which I'll get into later, Old Method simply can't be beat when it comes to targeting a specific Pokemon. If you needed a specific shiny, finding it with Old Method was basically guaranteed, and required far less legwork. All you needed was a certain outbreak to spawn on the area selection screen, and then it was all just soft resetting from there. You'd be guaranteed the shiny if you kept at it, and with outbreaks increasing shiny odds in general, it was just a matter of time until you got the shiny you desired. New Method is just as tedious and methodical as Old Method, but it takes quite a bit longer if you're searching for a single Pokemon type. To do New Method, you need to spawn into an area that has MMOs, or Massive Mass Outbreaks, active. These are just like regular Pokemon outbreaks, except they appear all over the area map. However, unlike regular outbreaks, you don't know which Pokemon are going to appear. So to properly shiny hunt, you need to check each MMO on the map for a Pokemon species you want. If it doesn't appear, you'll then need to head back to the village to refresh MMO spawns. After that, you'll need to re-roll at the town gate until another MMO appears so you can try again. The saving and soft resetting strategy from Old Method no longer works with New Method. So as you can see, it's a lot more time consuming. Thankfully, there's another new addition from the update, Mai's Munchlax, who helps a ton here. By feeding Munchlax 5 Aguav berries, he'll let you see what species of Pokemon are inhabiting every MMO on the area map. This is extremely helpful when searching for a specific shiny, because instead of wasting several minutes traveling around the entire area checking each mystery MMO, you can instead have Munchlax reveal them all in just a few seconds. This is a lifesaver for targeted hunts. And pro tip, save before giving the Agua berries to Munchlax, because if he doesn't end up showing any MMOs that you want, you can simply power down without saving and head back to the village, preventing you from wasting those precious 5 Agua berries. New Method is sort of a drag because it can make hunts for a specific shiny Pokemon super difficult. Trust me, I felt it when I was hunting for my shiny Riolu. This is why I suggest if you have an option that allows you to continue on Old Method, whether that's on a non-updated Switch or a second Switch, I suggest hunting specific shinies on that unupdated Switch and then updating after, or just never updating and trading the shinies over to your main file. Odds are you'll have a much better time getting the shinies you want via Old Method, so if you can retain it in any way, I recommend doing that. While I miss Old Method when hunting for a specific shiny, I do prefer MMOs overall. Having MMOs active on the map makes day-to-day exploration more lively. MMOs add so much replay value, because even when you've reached the endgame and exhausted most of the game's tasks, it's still good fun to do a flyover of all the MMOs in an area to check if there are any outbreaks worth farming. There's always the chance to find something rare like a shiny starter or perhaps a horde of alpha Pokemon. For me, even though I completed my decks and pretty much have had my fill with shinies, checking out MMOs still hasn't gotten old. There's something I love about it, something relaxing and comforting. Getting lost in Hisui was one of the greatest video game adventures of my lifetime, and each time I spawn into a world, I get a little hit of that feeling of wonder and adventure. I'll appreciate that forever. Pokemon Legends blew me away with how much there was to see and do. I mean, this game came out in January and I'm just now finishing the review. Combine this with the awe of seeing one of my favorite game series take on completely new heights, and it's truly unforgettable magic. Now that you made it this far into the video, I'd like to indulge a little bit and talk about the Pokemon team I assembled on my Hisui journey. You probably noticed it in the thumbnail. I went for a team of all yellow-colored shiny Pokemon. Yellow's my favorite color, and shiny Pokemon are so much easier to obtain in this game compared to past titles. So I thought, hey, why not? I even donned the yellow tuxedo throughout most of the game to match. So without further ado, let me talk a little bit about my yellow babies. I met Rhyperior as a shiny Rhyhorn via Old Method in the Coronet Highlands. This one is memorable as she appeared on only my second total reset of the Outbreak. She has an adamant nature, and her high attack plus great move pool led her to being a fantastic physical attacker for my team. Stab high horsepower hits super hard, and she knows ice and thunder punches for some added utility. I met Lickilicky as a full odds random encounter Lickitung in the Alabaster Icelands. I guess it was just meant to be for me in this Lickilicky. He served a similar function as my Rhyperior did, except on the special attack side of things. His wide move pool and decent special attack stat made him really useful in battles. He even gave me some clutch freeze hacks via his Ice Beam on Giratina during my final battle with Volo. Luxray was funny in the sense that he appeared as a completely random shiny Luxio as I was heading toward a Gumi outbreak during Old Method. Some of my best moments in shiny hunting were when random shinies would just appear on the way to certain outbreaks. This is the story for my shiny Luxray, and he ended up being an extremely useful Pokemon for me. A strong electric-type physical attacker, Luxray was actually the first Pokemon on my team to reach level 100. Upon its initial reveal, I was thrilled that we were getting a Hisui and Arcanine, and I instantly fell in love with the design. It was made all the better when I found out it had a yellow shiny, so this was the final straw. I had to have one. I encountered a shiny Growlithe on the cliffs of the coastlands right near the Noble Arcanine's memorial gravestone after a ton of soft resets via Old Method. Growlithe was my second longest hunt, taking me several hours, but the reward was well worth it. H. Arcanine's high attack stat and fire-type moves were useful in a lot of scenarios. She was a bit frail, but hit hard with the brave nature I gave her. A glass cannon, you might say. Plus, I had to have one of the new Hisuian forms on my team. Come on. My Lucario will always be special to me. I nearly pulled all my hair out looking for this one. I waited too long to nab a shiny Lucario with Old Method, so I needed to rely on New Method for this one, which made this hunt far more time-consuming. I legitimately spent weeks of my life shuffling through MMOs in the coastlands and icelands to farm Riolu outbreaks. Thank goodness for the berry trick. I finally found a shiny Riolu in the coastlands via an MMO at the tip of that peninsula in the map's lower right corner. The relief of finally finding this one was crazy. This is such a cool looking shiny, and I'd have to say my most prized Pokemon in the game. I call him my team's mascot. Plus his strong fighting type moves were exceptionally useful, especially the bulk up close combat combo. How else do you think I took down that Alpha Blissey? The final addition to my squad was Drifblim, who I actually found during one of my Riolu hunts in the Icelands. I got into the flow of checking any Drifloon MMOs as I was resetting for MMOs for Riolu in Alabaster. I got lucky with this one as I found this guy on one of these side missions. Having a ghost type like Drifblim is of course useful, and adds some nice type variety to my team here. I've always loved the yellow shiny Drifblim, and I was glad to take it for the final spot on my yellow team's starting roster. And that's my main team of 6. I actually found a couple other yellow shinies too. Some were completely random encounters, which is super lucky. I have a Steelix, Probopass, Octillery, and a few others as reserves for my yellow team, so I'm basically shiny rich at this point. And as you might have noticed, I ditched my starter, Hisuian Typhlosion, who I love, but she unfortunately didn't fit with my color scheme. This was my first time ever ditching the starter in a Pokemon game, and I definitely had some separation anxiety at first. But once I got my 6th yellow, I placed her in the pastures and never looked back. So what's the verdict? Would I call Pokemon Legends Arceus a spin-off or a mainline game? Well, it's hard to call PLA a spin-off, because it keeps so much of the core Pokemon game structure intact. But with such big, fundamental changes to the battle system, it's hard to call it a mainline game as well, at least right now. Legends has a lot of the characteristics of a mainline game, but not all of them. The new catching mechanics are superb, but to me, the battle system feels more like an offshoot than an innovation. I almost feel like placing Legends in a similar category to the Pokemon Let's Go games, except Legends is not a remake. Plus, there's only one single Pokemon Legends Arceus game, not two versions, for what would be the first time in the main series history. I gotta admit, Legends Arceus is dealing with somewhat of an identity crisis. My conclusion right now is I'll call it a mainline game, but one that's dependent on the future direction of the series to maintain that status. If future games maintain a lot of the innovations that were introduced in Legends, then without a doubt, it's a mainline game. However, if this doesn't happen, I could easily see myself viewing it as a standalone pillar or the first in a series of Legends spin-off titles sometime in the future. Many of the changes made in PLA are experimental, some of which I believe will stay with the main series going forward, and some I believe will get left behind. We already see traces of this with the newly announced next-gen titles Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. But if Scarlet and Violet end up being more similar to Sword and Shield and other dual version games throughout history, then I could see Legends being relegated to spin-off status, which isn't a bad thing by any means. Right now, only one thing is clear. The Pokemon series is at a crossroads, and it will be very interesting to see how things shake out going forward. Well, I think that's a wrap for me and Legends Arceus. I was glad to see content was expanded a little bit with the addition of Daybreak, despite my disappointment that the old shiny hunting method was patched out. Part of me is still always wary when Pokemon games get updated though. I think there's a traditionalist deep down inside me somewhere that just wishes games would stay the same once released. No downloadable updates, and what's on the game cart never changes. It's just how it always was, and I kinda like that. That being said, I don't think we'll see any more updates to PLA. I think the series is focused on looking forward. We already know about Generation 9, plus Pokemon Legends explicitly teases a connection to Unova. Ingo is from Unova and displaced here in Hisui, and he goes on about his brother and battle subway partner Emmett as you follow him through Turnback Cave in the Highlands. Are these hints at the Generation 5 remakes in the pipeline? Whether this is Game Freak's intention at all is completely unclear, but it really does open the doors to some delicious speculation. My theory? We'll get beautiful traditional Switch remakes of base Black and White sometime in the future. And then, very similarly to how Sinnoh got two different games with BDSP and Legends, there will be another Legend-style game released for Unova, in which we follow Ingo into the future. It will be the natural sequel to Legends Arceus and loosely based on the world and story of Black 2 and White 2. Based on what I'm seeing from the next generation, I really think we'll look back at Legends as an important and significant game in the trajectory of the series' future. But even if it's not, I'll always remember this unforgettable adventure. An escape to a fantasy I've always yearned for. Pokemon Legends Arceus is a timeless experience. Pokemon Legends Arceus is the growth of a series. Pokemon Legends Arceus is special to me. During the early days of this game, I had friends updating me with their progress, just as I was doing with them. YouTube and Twitter were alive with talk of PLA. People showing off progress on their decks, their accomplishments catching certain shinies. I had the time of my life. And maybe, even above being a great adventure and evolution to the Pokemon series, Pokemon Legends Arceus was something more powerful. It was a social event. A common thread between people who truly love these games. Because as the wisdom of the almighty Sinnoh states, all lives touch other lives to create something anew and alive.